Okay guys, I'm breaking up Tuesday's lesson into two videos just because I'm going to finish 5.2. I wanted to do a couple approximations. Um, so this will be one video and then the next one will be longer. That'll be 5.3. Alright, so cosine of pi over 6. So I'm going to find cosine of pi over 6. I just want to do a real quick review with you. So you got to go around the unit circle to find cosine of pi over 6. That's one of our famous pi over 6 guys. And if you remember, here's your pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, which simplifies to pi. And that means this guy is your 7 pi over 6. That line's kind of janky. Let me fix that. It's a little bit too far over. The angle should be smaller. It's only 30 degrees. Alright. So here is 7 pi over 6. And what are my GPS coordinates for that famous pi distance? That is square root of 3 over 2 comma 1/2. And what are my signs? Well, I'm in the third quadrant, so I went left. So that's a negative. And I went down. That's a negative. Okay, to get to that point. Cosine is the x value. So that equals negative root 3 over 2. So just a little review, a little reminder. Okay. Alright, cosine of 3.14. It's like, why would I ask you for cosine of 3.14 if I can simply just say that's pretty much cosine of pi? Okay, so cosine of pi, it's right here, there's pi. And cosine of pi, what is the point for GPS coordinate for pi? The pi spot, that is negative 1 comma 0. And again, the cosine is the x value, so that equals negative 1. Okay. Alright, so there is my pi guy. I walked around the circle to get to pi. And my pi over 6 guy, I walked around the circle, kind of just a little bit backwards, to get to 7 pi over 6. Alright. Cosine of 3. Now, this is an approximation. That is not one of our famous pi guys. So if you don't have a pi, then it's not a pi guy, it's just the number 3, okay? So, we are going to do three. Well, that's not one of our famous guys, so it's going to be an approximation on the unit circle, okay? So I'm going to bring it down on here. We know that this guy is pi, okay? That spot right there is exactly pi miles. That's about 3.14. Well, I only want pi. Or, I'm sorry, I only want 3. I don't want to go all the way to 3.14. I want to go to just 3. Okay, so I'm being lazy. I don't want to make it there. So, if I start again at 0, and I walk around, and I only want to walk 3 miles. Okay, 3 miles. Not 3.14 miles, which is about pi. So I'm going to stop, like right there. There's 3 miles. That's just shy of the pi guy. Okay. Well, what is that x and y value? I got sine and cosine going here. Well, if I wanted to get to this point, I move left. Okay. And that's not negative 1, 0. Those are two different points. This purple point is different than that aqua point. So we can't say that's about negative 1. It's not negative 1. This point is at negative 1, 0. This point is not. But if I move to the left to get to that point, what's a number very, very close to negative 1? Negative 0.9. Okay, so that's my x value. And if I wanted to go up to get to that point, okay, on the y-axis, what is that y value? Well, if this is one hole up here, this itty bitty spot, that's really, really small. That's a decimal. So right here is about, what, 0.5, okay, 0.75, 0.25, that's itty bitty, okay, maybe that's 0.1, barely, okay, so 0.1 would be your y value, okay, to get to this point on the unit circle. So over negative 0.9, up 0.1. Maybe somebody said 0.01, okay, that's fine, that's probably a better approximation, let's go there. If you plug this into, oh, I meant to tell you this in other videos. into Desmos, but this is perfect here actually because this is going to give you your approximation. So go on Desmos, make sure you're in radians, and plug in sine of 3, cosine of 3. And that is going to, on Desmos, it'll show you the walk, and then it'll give you the x and y value. So cosine of 3 is approximately negative 0.9. Got my point. And sine of 3 is approximately 0.01. Maybe somebody said 0.1. They're approximations. And in order to do really well with your approximations, again, you want to have a nice big circle and an exact circle, not an oval. It's going to throw off your approximations. So there is sine of 3 and cosine of 3. It's not the same as 3.14. It's a little bit shy. Alright, I want to do cosine of 3 pi. I want you to understand that these are not the same thing. Okay, these are not the same. That is the number 3. That is the number 3 pi. 3 pi is about 3 times 3.14. That's about 9-ish miles. 9 point something miles as opposed to 3 miles. Okay, not the same input. If I wanted to go 3 pi miles, let's start here. 1 pi, 2 pi's, 3 pi's. That's that guy. So cosine is negative 1. So 3 and 3 pi are not the same input. One's an approximation, that's 3 miles, and we're going to have to approximate on the unit circle. And the other one is exact. 3 pi, that's exactly at that pi spot. Okay, so I want you to be careful of that. Alright, and tangent of, let's say, negative 1. Okay, negative 1. That's not a pi. That's the number negative 1. So we're going to have to figure out how to do tangent of negative 1. Okay, we can do that together very quickly, and then I'm going to end this video. I just wanted to get some, what are these things called? Approximations. Alright, so first let me show you tangent of positive 1. So here's the deal, my lovely people. This is pi over 4, which is approximately 3.14 over 4. So that's like 3/4. Okay. That's about 3/4. That's how many miles you walked. 3/4 of a mile. Okay. This pi over 3 is about 3.14 over 3. That's a little bit bigger than 1. That's like 1 point something. Okay, 3.14 over 3 is about 1 point something. So that's, if you walked this chunk, that's about a mile that you walked. Okay, a little more than a mile that you walked. That's pi over 3. That's a little more than a mile. If you walk that arc, that's a little more than a mile. I want to walk a mile. Okay, and we'll get to the negative in a minute. 1 mile. So if I wanted to walk 1 mile, let me get a better marker here. I would stop shy of that 1 mark. So I would stop like right there. There's 1 mile. Okay. So we got to measure that distance. That's what we must measure. So to get to that point on the xy axis, I would go to the right for my x value. Okay. And I would go up for my y value. Okay. Well, what is that guy? Well, we know that this guy's 1/2, which makes sense. Look at, that's about 1/2. So it's a little more than 1. You had to go walk over a little bit further. So that's about 0.6. Okay, so I'll say my x value is about 0.6 and it's positive. We went to the right. And then my y value, we go up this guy, up this y-axis. Okay, it's more than 0.75, so maybe somebody said 0.8, and we went up, so it's positive. So there are my GPS coordinates to 1 mile. Okay, that's 1 mile. I just stopped shy of the pi over 3, which is a little more than 1 mile. Alright, I want to do negative 1, so I have to walk backwards. Okay, walk backwards. So this is my negative pi over 3, okay, spot. So if this is pi over 3, right below it is negative pi over 3. This chunk that you're walking, that's a pi over 3 chunk, but I walked backwards. Okay. That chunk is the same as that chunk. That mileage is the same as that mileage is just backwards. So we already know that's a little bit more than 1 or negative 1. Okay? Negative 1 point something. So I want to walk negative 1. So I'm going to walk backwards and I'm going to stop shy of that point. So maybe about right there. There's negative 1 miles. Okay. So again, what are those GPS coordinates? Well, we went to the right still, so it's still 0.6. Okay, it's right below the 1 mile marker. Okay, that's how it'll work. And then we went down. So it's negative 0.8. So same point, even with approximated, guys. Same point, the signs just changed. Okay, so it works just like the famous pi, guys. Pi over 3. This negative pi over 3 down here, it's going to have the same guys. It's going to have 1/2 comma square root of 3 over 2, but the signs will change. Your approximated guys, 1 mile, negative 1 mile, it's going to have the same point, just different signs for the quadrants. Alright, so let's find this tangent of negative 1. That is sine over cosine. The sine value is negative 8 over point negative 8. 0.6, and if you simplify that, you get negative 8 over 6, which is negative 4/3. So it's approximately. Sam, how did you just delete those decimals? I did not delete those decimals, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this is what I did. Negative 0.8 over 0.6. I can multiply any fraction by the form of 1. If I multiply the top and bottom by 10, so 10 over 10, multiplied by 4 and 1, that moves the decimal to the right. Moves the decimal to the right. Oopsie. Oh, and you get negative 8/6. So I literally just moved the decimal to the right by multiplying by 1 in my head. And then I simplified. Okay? So there's your tangent of negative 1. Again, that negative is not because we plugged in a negative. That negative is because we ended up in the 4th quadrant. So just because you have a negative doesn't mean your answer is going to be negative. It's the direction, and then whatever signs happen to come out, that's your answer. Okay. All right. So you need to practice a unit circle. Go on Desmos. Make sure in radians. It's all you got your homework now, and I'll have workshop throw in approximations like these guys. I wanted you to see the approximated spots on the unit circle. And now we're going to get into graphing. Okay, so make sure you are practicing the unit circle. You know it very well. Pause.